Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here to talk about something I've been working on really for 15 years of my life, so I should know about it by now, I hope. I work with people like Muhammad here. Now, Muhammad sells dirty water dogs. Who here knows what a dirty water dog is? All right, pretty good. Now, who here has eaten a dirty water dog in the last, let's say, month or so? All right, so maybe this is not the crowd. It's roasted peanuts. Do I have any roasted peanut fans out there? All right, that's a little better. Chicken and rice. We like the chicken and rice. I'll get the combo, the hot sauce, the white sauce. All right. So we're doing a little bit better. There's about 15,000 people who sell food on the streets and sidewalks of New York City every day, and you know who they are. We see them. You may buy things from them all the time, or you may walk right past them and barely even realize. Vendors are such a part of the urban landscape that sometimes we don't even notice. But you know who they are. They are immigrants. They're very diverse. They're really a reflection in who they are and what they sell. They're a reflection of the diversity of our city. And at the Street Vendor Project, we're a worker center for this population. So we provide services, legal services, some small business trainings. It could be something as easy as filling out a form, helping a vendor to do that if they can't do that. We work to increase the respect and the recognition that vendors receive, right, for their hard work. And we also, perhaps most importantly, we organize vendors to have a voice and to have more power in our city. And we're going to be asking I'm going to be asking you all to help organize later in a few minutes, so get out your phones. We're going to be doing some tweeting, I hope. That's great. You might be saying to yourself, well, I see the food part here, but you know, where's the justice? Where's the food justice? The coffee that I buy every morning from the coffee cart is definitely not fair trade coffee. It's not organic. I don't think it's local. So where's the food justice part come in? What's the point? I think there's a couple points. And the first is really the case that's made best by the Food Chain Workers Alliance. And we're a proud member of that group, and I encourage you to look them up. And that is that we should care about where our food comes from, for sure. And we should care about how our planet is treated, and we should care about how the animals are treated. But we should also care about how the workers are treated who serve us our food. And of course, that applies all the way from the workers in the fields with the crops when the food is just getting started, all the way to the point where it's delivered to us maybe on the street corner, where we receive that falafel in hand. And so the questions are these workers receiving a fair pay? Are the conditions under which they're working safe? And are they receiving the respect that they're due? And these are the questions that we need to ask. In the case of vendors, I'm sorry to say that the answer is often no on all three accounts. It's very difficult to be a vendor in New York City. The pay is meager. It's very difficult to make ends meet. The working conditions are hard, you know. Vendors are out there in all manner of weather, the heat, the snow. It's very physical work, being on your feet all day, long days. And frankly, the city doesn't really provide much help, where they should be helping vendors with their working conditions. In fact, often they make it more difficult. The police, the health department may come by and take your merchandise one day, and that happens quite a bit. The regulations are intense, and the fines cut into vendors' daily profit. And so at the Street Vendor Project, we're working on these issues, but it's not easy. And one of the reasons it's not easy is I think we haven't maybe been able to appeal to the food justice community as well as we'll hopefully be able to do today. So we're so happy to be here, and thank you again. The second reason why I think that what do vendors have to do with food justice, I think actually goes to something I heard at the reception on Friday night. Somebody broke it down for me very easily. They said they gave a definition of food justice, and I wrote it down. And it was pretty simple. Food justice is about providing food for everyone, no matter what your economic level. Sounded pretty good to me. And it really resonated because, you know, there's like 1 billion people around the world who eat street food every day. And invariably, they are people at the lowest end of the economic ladder. They're the most marginalized people around the world because, let's face it, you know, street food is cheap, right? One good thing. There's no rent for the vendor to pay. There's no corporation who's siphoning off the profits. And so the food is inexpensive, and that's really critical. You know, that might be a luxury for me. It might be nice to save a couple of bucks from the coffee cart as opposed to going into Starbucks. But for people who, for whom it really makes a difference, that couple of bucks added up a few times a day, added up every week and every day of the month, may enable them to live in our city and raise a family here and survive. And so it's really, really important, again, for people around the world and people here in our city. And street food has gotten a little bit trendy the last few years, you may know. And you can go to Midtown and see investment bankers at lunchtime, you know, lining up at their favorite food truck, you know, for Asian fusion, I think is what this is. And that's all well and good. We respect that. But really, still, around the world and in New York City, street food is what it has always been. That is, poor people selling food to poor and really low-income people. It was that case 100 years ago in New York City, and still predominantly it is the case here today. And it's important, especially now, as we hear about rising prices in our city as a result of gentrification, and there's a real affordability crisis, right? The cost of rent is always going up, and the costs in restaurants and what have you are always going up. And so the public space is all the more important, and the service that vendors provide is all the more important. The higher the prices are inside the restaurants, let's say, the more important it is for the vendors to be able to be there offering that alternative. And you know, you can say, well, people should cook, and that's great. As we know, it's very difficult. You know, people who may work 2 or 3 jobs, 12 or 14-hour days, simply don't have a chance to cook. They also may not know how to cook. And you know, we know a lot of people who live in apartments where there are no kitchens, shared living arrangements out in Queens, and there are no kitchens. And you know, literally, I know people who eat every day, every meal of every day on the street. And so for them, it really, really makes a difference. Where am I? So I mentioned the sort of gentrification and the higher ending of street food that's been happening, and this is really a result of public policies. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the big campaign that we're working on, and that is the campaign to lift the caps on food vending permits. And we're going to be asking for your help. It's actually, and you know, when I think about food justice. I'm not that smart. It confuses me. I don't really understand how to make change. It seems very gradual, and it seems very difficult. But on certain issues like this, it's very simple. You know, there's a law in New York City, and we're trying to change that law. There's 51 city council members, and if we can get 26 of their votes, then we can achieve some sort of food justice. The issue is pretty simple. In order to sell food on the street, you need to do so from a proper cart or truck, and you need to have a permit like this one. And the problem is that there are no permits available. This is Maria selling delicious Ecuadorian food out in Sunset Park. She would love to have a permit, as you might imagine. The problem is that the city in 1981 limited the number of permits available in the whole city to about 4,000 permits. The number of people who want one is so long that the waiting list can be 15 or 20 years. And Maria doesn't have 15 or 20 years. You know, she needs to support her family now. And with this cart, you know, this informal setup, it's very dangerous. Not having a permit, the police could come at any time and arrest her, and she has been arrested, and they could take her food there and throw it in the back of a garbage truck, and that does happen. And so for us, really, this is food justice. Fighting, in this case, our big campaign. It's not easy. You know, the big businesses don't want there to be more food vending permits. They want to control where we eat and where our food comes from. And we've been campaigning for more permits now for almost 2 years. We've been going into the streets. We organize vendors to rally and to demand these permits. But it hasn't worked. At least it hasn't worked yet. And so I'm asking you all here, because I see a lot of people in this room, and I know that there is a great deal of power in this room, and I wasn't going to come here and just share some stories. We want you to help. And so The person that's really got the power in this case is you may know her, the City Council Speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito. We happen to know that she's on Twitter all the time. And so I'm asking you now, please, if you, get out your phones, if you tweet, or you can do it later, but please don't forget. I do believe that the people in this room have the power to make a difference, especially on a local issue like this. And please just, add, in your own words, however you see fit best, ask her to help us lift the cap on vending permits. It's going to make a real difference for many people in need. It's going to make a difference for all of us as people who eat things in the city. It's going to make a real difference for food justice. And so thank you very much for the chance to present here today.